Okay, so I'm making a video. I haven't made one in ages. Been very busy. Been at a new school. Been a lot of learning to do and new things to do. I want to play that at the same time. See what happens. Right. So I thought as a bit of background, I'd have a video of me taking the dog for a walk. This is what I do every day. Sometimes twice. And if I'm feeling energetic, I'll do it on my bicycle. I'm riding my nuke-proof mountain bike here. And my nuke-proof mountain bike is a beast of a machine. I mean, I'm using it to take a dog for a walk. In reality, you could take that thing to ride down, a mountain. That's my daughter. So, what have I been doing with myself? One of my favourite hobbies, and I think any student, any kid of any age would really benefit from picking this up, is reading. So I read tons of books, and I mainly do it because if you know me at all, you know I'm dyslexic. I can barely spell my own name. I've got lots of little quirks when it comes to my writing. I can spell the same word the wrong way 5 times in a row, in different ways each time as well. So reading was always something when I was younger. It took me a lot longer to learn to read. I was about 2 years late learning to read. I had a lot of moves when I was growing up. But when I did finally learn to read, apart from the fact I could barely sit still long enough to read, I loved it. And so what I do now is I'll listen to a book whilst I'm riding my bike. I listen to an audio book and I've got my headphones in, and I think loads of kids would really benefit from doing this. Okay?
Why are there lines under these letters?
Oh, I'm not sure. Right. So, what do I read? Well, I read on, like I said, I use my phone and I listen to audiobooks, and actually I've listened to thousands of them, right? And I usually listen to them at a bit quicker speed as well, because you can listen to them faster. So, for example, this is a book by Daniel Dennett. Whoop. Probably not a good idea to have the sound on this whilst I'm doing this. Right, so
And the locus of all our suffering, our joy, our glory and shame.
as you can see,
Of immaterial souls, capable of defying the laws of physics.
now this book here is a philosophy book, and it's quite heavy going, so I'd listen to it slower. But I listen to stories much faster, so I can listen to a story, a narrative story about like a science fiction stuff I quite like. I like spaceships and guns and like spying and new technologies and alien species. I love these kind of books for fun and pleasure. And then I like philosophical books for deep thinking. And if I'm listening to a deep thinking book, a hard one that requires me to do a lot of thinking, I have to listen to it slower. But I'll give you an example of what it sounds like at various speeds. So this is
Has outlived its credibility, thanks to the advance of the natural sciences. Many people think the
that's at 1.5 times speed, and if I listen to it, maybe the max speed I'll listen to things is probably twice speed.
implications of this are dreadful. We don't really have free will, and nothing really matters. The aim of this book is to show why they are wrong.
Right, and yeah, as you can see. So what have I read recently and I've enjoyed? Quite an interesting book, The Coddling of the American Mind, and this is a book about how research shows that the suicide rate among teenagers has gone up quite a bit, and it seems to be linked directly with when widespread adoption of mobile phones, basically. So kids have got phones in their pockets and they're able to use certain things, and you can see me using my phone on my bicycle there. They can use certain things with their phones, right? So what can they do with their phones? Well, a lot of the things they can do with their phones are things they've always been able to do. Sending messages is just like a faster version of sending emails, or a faster version of sending a letter, right? But it's just doing it quicker, isn't it? But what's different is the sharing of images and what social media allows people to do. And the argument that these people are making is that the access to social media has meant that kids of that generation don't go out as often, don't take as many risks, don't ride their bike in a park and slip over and fall over. You fell over, didn't you, Lillian? Right, I think we'll see you fall over in a minute. Oh, here's the dog doing a poo. Responsible dog owners always pick up their dog's poo, right? Put it in the bin. When I see a man doing this, I think there's a civilized man. When I see someone walking away from their dog's poo, I think uncivilized, don't deserve to live near me. Should be kicked out, to be honest, kicked out of the community. If you do that with your dog, that's what I think. Anyway, what was I talking about, Lillian? What book? Forgotten now. Oh yeah, the coddling of the American mind. So they're saying about how the use of social media encourages people to make unfair comparisons with themselves. You'll look at pictures of other people and they always only post pictures or stories or information about themselves that makes them look good or makes them look more macho or more beautiful or more glamorous or more interesting than they really are. So what happens is that it becomes like an arms race and here we go, you fell over there. Who goes in the bin? William fell over. Anyways, so because kids are constantly comparing themselves to other kids, but they don't compare themselves to a real example of what another kid is like, real kids have scratches on their knees, have bumps on their elbows, have clothes with holes in them, have fun. Yeah? Unreal kids live on your smartphone and have halos around their heads and are always doing something amazing and make stupid gun signs and all this stuff and end up trying to chase something that's not real. Anyways, that was an interesting read, and it really got me thinking about young adults' mental health, because that's something that is of an interest to me. When you're a teacher, you do come across a lot of students. You coach people through difficult times in their lives, and it's not a surprise that when people are going through their adolescent years, going from being a child to becoming an adult, that they're going to have some difficulties. And one of the things in this book, The Coddling of the American Mind, they mention is that a lot of the habits that this generation appear to have picked up are because of overprotection. And by being overprotected or also not learning to take risks, they're more likely to see themselves as being fragile. Now, one of the things that in my life has been great is BMXing, right, or cycling as well, in general. And cycling, you can only get good at by coming off. The number of times I have wrecked myself on a bike, I've smashed into the floor, I've knocked myself unconscious probably 10 times when I was a kid BMXing. I've got holes in my legs, ginormous holes in my legs. I've snapped my knee 4 times, I've had it reconstructed, I've smashed my elbow, I've got holes in my head, but I love cycling, right? Cycling is one of the things to me that gives me maximum pleasure, right? It's pure freedom. It's like when I read about meditation, for me, cycling is meditation, so just bump Benji in the bum. Cycling is meditation, and it's something I want to do, and I want my kids to do. I want to give them the opportunity to do it. I don't want to force you to do it. But like I say, if you're not used to taking risks, you won't find out. You won't find out about all these fun things to do. Yes, you can hurt yourself, but then there are other risks you can take. What about intellectual risks? What about... Do you want to go? Okay. What about the risks you take when you try and answer a question in class? And you might screw up, and you might look stupid, and your friends might make fun of you, and then you don't. Right? If you choose not to, you're being cowardly. Right? And if you're in the mindset of, I like taking risks, I like taking risks, and getting hurt isn't the end of the world, and especially getting hurt emotionally is not the end of the world. Right? Let's say you ask a question in class, or you answer a question in class, and you say something stupid. And the teacher does the absolute worst thing possible. Pulls a face and looks at you like you're an absolute idiot and goes, "Are you retarded? Are you retarded?" What are you going to do? What's going to happen? The kids might laugh at you. In reality, the kids might snigger a little bit, but their mouths will open and they'll look at this teacher and think, this is a terrible person. What a horrible guy. Your job here is to be, supportive. Alternatively, you may have a teacher that doesn't do this and they say something like, "Oh, that was a good attempt," or something like that. You may have some students laugh at you. What do you think of them? Do you think these people are great and have the right to judge you? Of course they don't, right? If you think the teacher is terrible for making fun of you for making a mistake, then what do you think of the students that make fun of you? Right? They're being unhelpful, basically. They're being unhelpful, and they are creating an environment within which they can't learn and they can't progress. So, that's from the example from my perspective as a teacher, but my perspective as a human being is the same. If I say something stupid to my wife and she makes fun of me for it and doesn't you know, or I don't mind a bit of laughter. I don't mind if I say something really dumb if somebody makes fun a bit. But as long as there's an opportunity to, I'm not terrified of speaking. I'm not terrified of asking questions. I'm not terrified of talking in case, you know, I get shouted down or harangued. Then we can progress and have a healthy relationship, talk well. These are all good things. Anyways, I think that's something that's kind of missing in this generation, and that they'd really benefit from is taking more risks, getting outdoors more. Anyway, that's what that book got me thinking about, and it got me thinking about kids' mental health, and that got me reading about cognitive behavioural therapy. So I'm reading another book as well. I finished that book and I read another book called Feeling Good, the new mood therapy, and it's about cognitive behavioural therapy. This is the dog's number 2 poo. Right? It's about cognitive behavioural therapy. Cognitive behavioural therapy is a branch of, I suppose, psychology and psychoanalysis. It's where people talking therapy to help people improve their behaviour. Basically, behaviours they don't like. So it could be anything. You could use it for addiction. You could use it for anger management. The number of kids that I speak to who say, I've got anger management, I have, and then they decide they can use that almost as an excuse to lose their temper, it seems. But there are lots of things that people do all the time, I think. I mean, myself, I've got examples from myself. I sometimes eat 3 bags of crisps and I think, what a pig I am. How disgusting. You know? And I want to try and change that behaviour to something more productive, something better for me. So how should I go about doing it? Well, I might go and speak to a therapist. And if I spoke to a therapist, what would they tell me? Well, if I spoke to a Freudian therapist who read the books of Sigmund Freud and believed in that movement, as I think they still do in France, they might ask me about my dreams and my childhood and try and work out what's driving me to this. This is a nice little fast bit for the dog here. Sometimes I take him off the lead on this bit and I absolutely kill it. There's a couple of little lumps in the ground here. You can get a decent bit of air off as well. Anyway, if you went to a Freudian analysis, they'd ask you about your dreams and things like this. If you went to a little bag of poo there. If you went to a CBT therapist, what they'd talk to you about is immediately before you ate the crisps, how were you feeling? What mood were you in? And you might say, I don't know, maybe a person feels a little bit depressed or excited about eating the crisps. Let's say they're feeling a bit miserable. Right, I've had a bad day at work, I'm feeling a bit miserable, I'm going to eat some crisps. So what would the CBT therapist tell you to do? They'd say, what made you feel miserable? What thoughts went through your head? Right? And you could say, oh, well, I remember the day, and on the way back from work, a guy cut me up, and that made me angry, because I was riding my bicycle, I got cut up, I nearly got knocked off my bike, I feel miserable, and because of that, I'm going to eat some crisps. And they tell you to work out why you feel angry. Then why did you feel angry? Oh, well, I felt angry because the man must have done it on purpose. He looked at me when he did it. And then they'd say, do you think it's realistic that the man did it on purpose, or do you think it's realistic that he just had a bad day himself and he was being careless and thoughtless? But not all drivers are like that. And talk back to the thought that's making you feel depressed, basically. That's what they encourage you to do. And it seems like a very sensible and clever approach. There's loads of really good examples in there, and that's another book I read this month. So you can't get much happier than this. A dog flying along on its lead, like practically pulling me along here he is. Okay, right. And then there's one more book I read this month that I suppose is worth mentioning. Well, 2 more, actually. One was The Law of Peoples by John Rawls. He's a philosopher. And I suppose he is writing about how societies can be organised in a similar way to John Stuart Mill was writing about how societies can be organised. John Stuart Mill's philosophy is utilitarianism. It falls under that branch of philosophy. And this guy, John Rawls, the spiel about it says that it's a counter to utilitarianism. So it's kind of like a separate set of arguments that don't take the same things to be true, basically, as the utilitarian arguments, and they have been really interesting. One of my favourite things, what got me interested in John Rawls in the first place, was his interest. He's got what's it called? An idea that you can use to experiment with, right? So it's a mental crux basically. So he created this idea. Imagine you could delete your memory, so you don't know who you are. You wouldn't even know what sex you were, how old you were, how clever you were, what your family is like, how much money you earn, right? And then you get, say, 10 people like this. You put them in a room, and then you give them some pill or some drug that does this, so that they can't remember who they were. It's temporary, but it will last for, I don't know, half an hour, or something like this, right? They don't know where they are, they don't know who they are, they don't remember any of these things, but they can still reason and talk. And you get them to agree upon the rules of the society they live in. You give them details of the people that live in that society and how you think, and you get them to work out a set of rules like laws and customs and things they think that would be good for that society. Now, when these 10 people all agree upon the rules, then the drug wears off and they find out who they are in that society. Now, he created this idea as an ideal to strive for. It's not possible, it's not doable, it's not supposed to be a doable idea. It's supposed to be something we could all aim for when we're negotiating with people. I think it's a really nice ideal, actually. I think that it reminds me of, when people talk about religion, it reminds me of how people say that God is like the ideal. Well, I think that's an idea that's not attainable, the veil of ignorance, but I think it's worth striving for. So it's added nicely to my personal humanist philosophy of life. And this is the end of my bike ride, so I'm going to stop right there.